Motivated by a single case of child maltreatment, the first Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children was created. 4 years later, in 1877, the American Humane Society was established to serve as a national organization concerned with child abuse. The first goal of the organization was to secure humane treatment for working animals and livestock, and not the well-being of children. However, in following years, child safety became a part of the association's agenda. In 1886, the association's constitution was officially amended to include children. By the 1930s, the government began to recognize its role in helping families. The Social Security Act of 1935 established Title V grants for states with maternal and child welfare. These grants included allocations to mothers who lived in areas suffering from severe economic distress. Remember, this was only 6 years after the start of the Great Depression. Another allocation was for services for crippled children, vocational rehabilitation, and a limited amount for processing the grants. The last allocation was for child welfare services for the protection and care of homeless, dependent, and neglected children, and children in danger of becoming delinquent. Through the 1940s and 50s, medical professionals published a series of clinical reports describing victims of abuse. These first clinical reports laid the groundwork for defining child abuse as a medical problem. In 1962, Dr. C. Henry Kempe and his colleagues formally described the battered child syndrome, which was characterized by injury to soft tissue and skeleton, accompanied by the evidence of neglect. In their publication, they also described the condition as being mishandled by physicians due to their resistance to bring cases to authorities. As a result, a national agenda was put into motion establishing mandatory reporting laws. This first paper was regarded as the single most significant event in creating awareness and exposing the reality of abuse. In 1963, the Children's Bureau of the National Center of Child Abuse and Neglect drafted the first model reporting statute. In 1965, the Program of State Governments and the American Medical Association drafted 2 additional models. By 1966, all U.S. states except Hawaii had drafted legislation. The definitions of maltreatment were also expanded to include not only neglect and physical abuse, but also emotional abuse, malnutrition, sexual abuse, and exploitation. The Child Abuse and Prevention Treatment Act of 1974 defined child abuse and neglect and set a minimum standard for state-mandated reporting laws. Abuse and neglect are defined as the physical or mental injury, sexual abuse, negligent treatment, or maltreatment of a child under the age of 18 by a person who is responsible for the child's welfare. In order to qualify for federal child protection funding, states were required to adopt similar definitions of child abuse. The Child Abuse Prevention Treatment Act also helped identify key risk factors for child abuse and neglect by developing more effective treatments for child abuse and neglect. This act also required child abuse crime information to be reported in a national index system. The definition was broadened by the Child Abuse Prevention, Adoption, and Family Services Act of 1988 to say the physical or mental injury, sexual abuse or exploitation, or maltreatment of a child by the person who is responsible for the child's welfare. The Child Abuse Prevention, Adoption, and Family Services Act also established an interagency task force on child abuse and neglect. The task force established a national data collection system for false, unfounded, or unsubstantiated cases, as well as the number of deaths due to child abuse and neglect. Several states have broadened this definition and expanded their own reporting laws. States are not allowed to limit their definitions. This could result in limited federal funding.